Good morning, everyone.
Hello,
Thank
hello.
you very much for joining us for the first session of the day, the Red Hat session. My name is Jeff Hanlon,
I'm August Simonelli.
and today we are going to be getting real with AI. What does that actually mean? You'll soon find out. Let's do a bit of audience participation to begin with, and no, this is not requesting a new headset for those that are paying attention. Can we have a show of hands, please, for anyone who is currently working involving AI, any sort of project work, development, anything like that in the AI space? Okay,
Cool.
interesting percentage there. So the good news is, you're at the right session, because what we're hoping to help you understand today is the role that Red Hat can play in your AI efforts. Let's begin, shall we? So, there we go. The professors at Boston University, guys who looked after the computer science, computer engineering courses, had a particular challenge. They have a lot of students that are very interested, particularly in recent years, in learning more about the critical concepts of AI. One of the things that these professors decided was necessary was simplifying the learning environment for their students. They were an AWS customer, therefore they had access to pretty much all of the different AI tooling you could imagine. But what they were seeking was a way in which they could bring all of this together in more of a personalized format for each and every one of the students. Something where applications, services, all of these things could be put together as a customized workbench, a self-service environment for working in AI, if you wish. So they went to market, did some research, and made the decision to invest in Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS. Red Hat, like most tech companies, we love acronyms. So from here on in, we'll refer to it as ROSA. But ROSA was selected, and specifically the OpenShift AI service extension. So this is something that then provided the students with the ability to enter their own personalized workspace, all of the applications, the libraries, services that they need, including the data, readily accessible. And it cuts away a lot of the bespoke effort normally involved just to create a learning environment for these university students. They're focusing on AI. What is AI? The best way to describe that is that it is finding a way in which we can get computers to, I like the MIT definition here, imitate cognitive human functions. What do we mean by that? We're talking about giving computers the ability to learn, to problem solve, to interpret meaning from data, right the way through to making decisions and taking actions. Now, AI, particularly in recent years, has captured public interest. Have a look at the exhibition hall. I think there's not one stand that you can go by today that does not reference AI. And there's a reason for this. As you'll see on the slide here, Gartner has done a little bit of research, and as the original organization that coined the term of the hype cycle, they have classified that we are right in the middle of a very, very hype period when it comes to AI. Now, we can understand this because a couple of years ago there was a very specific implementation of generative AI that changed the way people viewed the internet. It was something where now we can start to ask questions and get very different responses than we were used to, and it also provides us the ability to generate content, become content creators, text, images, videos, even cutting code, for those of you who are interested in taking a few shortcuts there. But the idea is that generative AI is here and now, and it's really stimulating a lot of thought and a lot of business interest. You can see here on the slide that businesses are looking at generative AI as a significant turning point for them to invest in, to engage more effectively with customers, but also find ways in which they can retain those customers. How do we avoid churn? So, when we look at the Gartner research, one of the things that they put forward is that generative AI is still in its early stages. It's been around for a little while, but there's still a few hiccups, and we'll explore those in a moment. But the way they see it is that we're at a turning point in technology, in history. They're basically saying that once Gen AI stabilizes, we are going to be at a point where the it'll become a general purpose technology. What do we mean by that? They're saying it's the equivalent of the inception of the steam engine, the invention of electricity, and the internet itself. So it's quite profound. But what is really interesting is that we're not going to get the value from generative AI until we can iron out the bugs. So let's have a quick look at where generative AI fits. We've been using predictive AI now for decades. It still exists. It's plateaued to a degree based on some McKinsey research, but that does not mean that it's going away. It's still heavily utilized by FSI, health, and also marketing. And it relies heavily on a lot of historical data, being able to draw conclusions, detect patterns, and make decisions on some data points and some data trends. Generative AI is quite different in the sense that it's less about letting the system work with the data, it's more about working with human prompts. But you still need a lot of underlying data if it's going to be of any value to the end user. When we look at the adoption here, we can see that there's roughly a third of the market that has adopted this technology, but you can see that we are at the peak of inflated expectations. And for those of you that are familiar with this particular diagram, we're about to fall off the cliff into the trough of disillusionment. And that really comes down to one key reason. We need to be able to get this right, and a lot of organizations aren't. I'll give you some examples. CIO magazine highlights that there are 4 common AI project challenges. You can see them listed there. One of the interesting things is that there are a lot of organizations that are encouraging their IT teams to get that chatbot into production online as soon as possible. These things can sometimes bypass legal and governance within the organization. And some of you are probably sitting there going, yep, I've seen it. The problem with this is that then attracts some unwelcome costs. I'm not just talking about the development and the costs of moving something into production, it's the consequences of having something such as a chatbot released into the wild that quite simply isn't working properly. Some of you will be familiar with some recent episodes where there was one airline where the chatbot was just happily giving away free tickets to people if they asked for them. There was also another interesting experience where a grocery chain decided that they wanted to combat food wastage by creating a chatbot that allowed you to type in ingredients and it would propose some really interesting recipes. The only problem with that was that some typical types of internet users decided that they would experiment with things such as bleach to see whether or not we could get a tasty recipe that involved a cleaning product. The answer is yes. Whether it was fit for human consumption remains to be seen. But the problem we face with this type of stuff is that there are a lot of chatbots out there that are now notorious for giving false or misleading information. And the term that we use there is AI hallucinations, something that we need to be able to avoid at all costs. The expectations of business are something that we also have to fight with. What I mean by that is that we need to be in constant communication with our business leadership, our stakeholders, and helping them understand the difference between what they would like to see and what is possible, because these expectations can get in the way of us doing the right thing and thoroughly testing and priming the technology before we release it. Finally, we have the data issues themselves. Data is a critical consideration for when we're doing this, and I'm sure for most of you working in the field of AI, this is nothing new. The way in which we can address this is by really paying attention to these 3 points. These are the key things that will help you achieve AI success. You need to prioritize your use cases. There's nothing new in being able to assess your use case based on the first 2 here, impact and risk. That's pretty standard. But when it comes to the data, this can make or break your project. What do I mean by that? Well, where is your data? Can you access it? Do you have permission to access it? Perhaps you're looking at a data source that requires an API. No big deal. Oh, but we need to pay for a license to use that. All of these types of considerations. When you look at the data, it's really interesting to understand that in a recent survey, Workday polled 2,300 executives globally, and they came back with a 4 percentile rating. 4% of those 2,300 said that they felt that they had access to clean, usable, quality data. So that tells us a lot. We've got a lot of organizations that are working in this space that are struggling, and data is one of the key challenges that they face. Okay, so now I've probably prompted a few of you to reconsider your career options. That's not what we're here to do. We want to help you understand how do you go from some of the challenges that I've described to a point where we can overcome those and get to developing, creating, and really publishing chatbots, anything to do with generative AI that is going to be of benefit to you and your customers. Let's have a look. Introducing Red Hat OpenShift AI. This is going to be something new to many of you. You can see here, we mentioned earlier in the Boston University case that Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS is the foundation. ROSA is the foundation for OpenShift AI. What we're doing with OpenShift AI, it runs as what we call an OpenShift operator. For those of you who are working in microservices architectures, containers, etc., we're talking about a Kubernetes operator. So we have a huge library. If you go to the AWS marketplace, we have tons of operators that we can put into OpenShift that focus on the AWS services that are available, but we also have a range of applications and services that can be very quickly and easily added to your AI workspace by simply visiting the operator hub, or as I said before, you can do this from the marketplace. But the point here is that the operator is the secret sauce that makes all of this work. It allows you to bring these applications, components, even data connections. It will install, configure, maintain, and fine-tune all of those applications. Everything is integrated for you. It actually helps you cut away a lot of the effort that would normally be needed if you were to try and build this all yourself. So consider it a bit of a turnkey approach. What we don't do is actually give you any models to work with. You are free to be able to utilize foundational models, generative AI models, and then work from those. As an example, on the AWS marketplace, you can get models from the likes of Starburst, Pachyderm, Anaconda, Intel, and of course, IBM. But there are heaps and heaps of different models that you are free to download and integrate and make them the basis of your project. And it's a very straightforward thing to be able to do using these operators. One of the things that we also focus on, and if we go back to the Boston University experience, how do we provide this level of consistency, automation? We streamline this whole environment so that the emphasis is on making things happen, not building and maintaining an environment. This is where MLOps comes into play. There are many phases, as you can see here, in the machine learning lifecycle. What we really want to be able to do is achieve a state where this collaboration between different teams, different researchers, engineers, developers, we want to be able to compress that and make it so that as much as possible it becomes something that's automated and just happens as a consequence of utilizing a system such as OpenShift AI. So you can see on this diagram here that we've actually got the ability to modify our models and also iterate, test them, be able to determine what are the changes that we've been able to bring around by our latest effort of development. And MLOps is something that we certainly encourage and can actually help you achieve, once again, by using the platform. One of the things that you might look at is a foundational model like retrieval-augmented generation, RAG. And this is something that my colleague August is about to walk you through right now. August, over to you.
Awesome, thanks Jeff. So let's look more closely at your best options for AI, and I think we've really covered this and everything. Everyone's looking at generative now. Predictive is basically in the rearview mirror, but we're looking at generative. So let's peel back some of those layers and see how Red Hat can support you in that journey. Yep. There we go. So there's a lot of ways to approach Gen AI, and as Jeff said, we're going to look at a model, a version that is the most accessible and gives you the results the quickest, and that's RAG, or retrieval-augmented generation. This is what you're normally used to, right? You have an LLM and you train it, and it can be costly and take some time. With RAG, we're able to move some of the data into a data store, and then the model can consult the data store incrementally, and that allows it to be more current and easier to update. So imagine you might have a chatbot that maybe interacts with your documentation, and you have new documentation, new release, all that. It happens all the time with docs. If you had an LLM only, you would just have to train that, and it would be a difficult procedure. With RAG, we can actually add those updates into the data store and get those incremental updates more quickly. And all this happens in AWS today. So as Jeff said, OpenShift runs is in AWS as ROSA or self-managed. And OpenShift AI is an operator, and an operator is a way that OpenShift automates software and ensures that it installs properly. And it also has a concept of Operator Hub, which is a way to manage hundreds of Red Hat and partner certified operators. So it's like this whole toolbox for AI, and it really makes it easy. So let's get on to actually taking a look at a RAG model in action inside of OpenShift AI. So what we have here is an OpenShift installation with an application deployed to it. And the application is a chatbot. It also is hosting an LLM. We do model hosting, but that's not what this example is. And it's also hosting a database. We're going to ask the chatbot a question about our documentation, because it's keyed into our OpenShift AI documentation. So this is our little chatbot. We ask it a question, and it gives us a response, but it's not a great one. We've added some neat stuff. We have a new version of our documentation. We have a really cool fraud tutorial that we added to our documentation, and our users are coming along and they're asking this awesome chatbot, and it doesn't have the right answer, because all this stuff is new. So what are we going to do about it? Well, with OpenShift AI, we create an environment where our data scientists can easily work to create solutions for this. So in OpenShift AI, so we're in OpenShift AI now, we can create a data science project with all the pieces you need to run RAG today. So you get a really nice model here where you can create a workbench and pull all the pieces inside of AWS together. So as you see here, I'm demonstrating just the wizard that you go through to create the workbench. We can choose different notebooks. We can preload that with whatever we want. I'm using a custom one, but it's up to you. These can be loaded for your different environments. Sizing can all be customized. Acceleration, obviously you're running on EC2. You saw all the cool stuff you can do with it. So it's all built into OpenShift AI to access these features. It will also manage your storage, so it will talk to OpenShift underneath and create a persistent volume to allow you to persist the workbench. It will also allow you to create a data connection to feed data into the process, into your model. And so why wouldn't you use something like S3? And you'll see in the second part of this demo, we'll actually create a automated process to do this work by adding stuff to an S3 bucket. So this is just normal S3 stuff, nothing fancy here. You've used this every day. OpenShift AI will manage those pieces and create the workbench for you. And so it'll go out and it'll gather the images, it will go and sort out the security, it will resolve any kind of security, authentication, anything you need. So you're seeing this is today, right? This is a released GA product. This is happening right now. I mean, it's not happening right now, but so go ahead and then you can log in, and the data scientists will then have access to their workspace. And so now we're in a Jupyter notebook so that we can go ahead and make updates to our external model, our external data store, and from our external code. So the scientist will take the code, clone it into the workbook, and once it's there, can go ahead and perform their work. So in here is a Python script, and I don't know if many of you have worked in this space. This is just a workbench. This is just Python. So this will go ahead and allow them to interact with the pieces that they need. So most importantly here is we see that we are interacting with an external database. In my case, it's a PostgreSDB. This could be RDS, right? You could do that there. It just needs to have the vector extensions put onto it. So that's all you got to do. And what else? We're going to update the product version. We're going to ensure that we're speaking to the latest documentation. You can see we're highlighting that here. We're going to press these updates into the external database. And on top of that, to make sure we are being as specific as we can and offer the most to our users, we can go ahead and select external sources to reference. So we add websites and URLs to it. So this, if you had to retrain the LLM, it would take more time. It's not impossible, but I can add these straight away. Ooh, I got a fraud tutorial. I can put it right in there. And I like that, right? Because this is user documentation. I need that chatbot to be responsive. I need it to take the time off of other people, other workers who are trying to work with that. So I've accelerated this with the GPU, and I can go ahead and run the code. And in this case, it took about 30 seconds. It depends on what you're doing, but it's all right there. You can see the steps being completed. And what it's doing now is actually pushing those updates into the data store. It's not touching the LLM, it's pushing them into the data store. But the data store, or the LLM, knows to consult that data store. So I'm going to ask it the same question again. What's the latest release of OpenShift AI self-managed? And now I got an answer, and I got those referenced websites. So my users are able to go straight to the information they're trying to find. And to really kind of knock that one home, let's ask it about the fraud tutorial, right? You've been to user docs and you're scrolling through, or you're control Fing on the, you're trying to find it on the site. Well, now I've got a link directly to my fraud tutorial. And that makes it a lot easier to update that database. Now, that's one way of doing it. It's a manual way. Let's look at a way to automate this process through a pipeline. So let's say we have a new piece of information on here. It's a user section. We're going to manage users. We added a really cool piece of documentation. The doc writers just published it. We had already had information about it, but it's a bad answer. It's an out-of-date answer. It doesn't have any resources. But because we've already trained it, it's trying, right? It's worked out that there's stuff about users in these things, but it's not as accurate as we'd like it to be. So let's go ahead and set up a data connection, which we've done, to take a new notebook out of the S3 bucket, perhaps you Argo CD'd into there, or whatever you want it to do, that has the changes to look at this new documentation. So then we can also put things like result summaries, we could do more tests, we could do security testing, all this really cool stuff, and it's all just sitting in the S3 bucket. So in this case, now this is familiar, you just saw this in a previous screen, I've added the references, I've added the sections to go grab. But rather than doing this manually and rerunning it, I am going to create a pipeline. So just like with AWS CI/CD pipelines, OpenShift supports Tecton pipelines, right? So OpenShift AI will communicate with OpenShift pipelines underneath it. It's built straight in, and I can build a pipeline server in OpenShift AI as a data scientist without needing to go into OpenShift to build it up. I've connected it to my S3 bucket as my source to insert that data, and I'm going to go and grab a pipeline file. Now, notebooks support dynamic pipelines with Elira. You can do it with that. Otherwise, simple pipeline run, it's Tecton, right? This is the thing that your coders are using already to build their pipelines. So that'll manage everything you need. It'll set up all the tasks. Again, no magic here. We're just integrating pipelines and AI. Not bad. So we'll do a run. And with that, OpenShift and OpenShift AI will start talking to each other. So now I've switched over into OpenShift and I can see my pipeline run. So it's exactly the same, right? So my tasks are running, my scripts are running, I can watch the steps by task through the wonderful OpenShift interface, and then I can also keep flipping back to OpenShift AI. So your data scientists can be following this view, and your OpenShift admins will follow the other, and they may be the same people. We totally acknowledge that. So this just allows that perfect integration between the two. And as mentioned, whatever you do with this pipeline's up to you. So because we integrate it, if you want to add in extra tests right through your OpenShift AI interface, you can do that. So you might look through the response times, you might add any other kind of testing that you need to do. And ultimately, it will work through the process, however you want to manage it, however you want to view it. And you'll see it complete. So what you see here is the tasks actually finishing in OpenShift, and then if you go back to OpenShift AI, you're getting the same thing. So again, I just really wanted to show this integration between the two, that we're able to update our RAG model, our RAG database or data store, in the same way, but with a pipeline that's perfectly built in to OpenShift and OpenShift AI. And then the data scientist, of course, sees it completed as well. And then we can go back and ask the chatbot for the updated information. And it will give a better response based on what it's found, and as well as the extra information that we have in there. And just as you saw before, but again, with a pipeline integrated into OpenShift, we have it. There it is. Cool. And it gives you the link back to it. And that's it, Jeff.
Beautiful.
What do you think, huh?
That was great.
Yeah.
So what we just saw there was August demonstrating to you the real value of what it is that OpenShift AI can provide. It's around that consistency, that standardized approach for all individuals in various teams to be able to access, being able to create that workspace, take away a lot of that heavy lifting in assembling, integrating, deciding which components we need to do. And as you saw, August, he was able to commit a number of updates instantaneously and see the results right there in front of him, right there in front of you. So it's all about being able to deliver value while you're innovating with AI. And hopefully that's something that you've been able to take away from this session. Thank you very much for joining us. And speaking of joining us, you'd be remiss not to scan that QR code and join the Red Hat team tonight at the nearby bar, the Gyoza Beer Stadium. But most importantly, if you have enjoyed what we've covered today, if you have questions, you want to know a little bit more, please head over to the Red Hat booth sometime today. It is armed with so many specialists, our experts on this technology, waiting for you to pop over and ask the questions and to see more of this technology sing and dance for you. Hopefully this has been of value to you today. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great
Thanks,
AWS
everyone.
Summit.
Do you want to put that up?
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff and August. Please submit your feedback to Summit Up, right? The next session gonna start in 10 minutes, and it accelerates development with AI-powered coding companion. Please join us in 10 minutes.